Have you ever asked a lady when she's due and she wasn't? I've done that. I've done that more than once, actually. I've managed to do that. And so now I refuse to do that. I don't care if she's in labor right in that moment. I just avoid that because there's this universal truth, and you don't, need to write this down. You just know this, or you learn it pretty quick, is that once words are out there, they're just out there, that you can't kind of cycle them back and bring them back. And we've all been given a button that looks a little bit like this with our mouths, that we can pause and we can, and you learned this as a child, think before you speak, think before you speak, think before you speak. We've all been given a pause button. Now, some of our pause button doesn't get used very often, but we all have that button. But what we would really like, and if somebody could invent this, man, you could be a billionaire in any quick little second. What we really want is a button like this, a rewind button. Where you can say, in the heat of the moment, I say something that I really didn't really mean, or I got angry and I said something, or I was hungry and, I said something, and I say, man, I wish I didn't say that, and we could, kind of rewind and say it a better way, say it a different way. That'd be great, but unfortunately, that's not something that's available to us. But what we've been trying to do last week and the week before is we're trying to make good decisions in our life. We're trying to avoid some future regret. And one of the things that we can do to avoid some future regret is to be really, really careful about the words that come out of our mouth. And so we're taking the next several weeks and we're talking about not your husband and his big mouth, even though he might have a big mouth, not your wife and her big mouth, not your coworkers and their big mouth, or your neighborhood association and their big mouth. We're talking about you and your big mouth, because maybe nobody's ever told you this before, but you have a big mouth. And your mouth has gotten you in trouble, just like my mouth has gotten me in trouble. And so we don't want you to elbow anybody during the message, because we're talking about you and your big mouth. And if we can get this right, here's the promise, that we can avoid some future relational regret. And so last week we looked at something that James said. This isn't original to me, but James said that if we're going to really get this right, if we're going to avoid some things, we need to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Quick to listen and slow to speak. Now, if you were here last week, we learned some hand motions. If you weren't here with us last week, I'm going to teach you the hand motions, because we're going to do these all 4 weeks. And so you just as well get used to it. So if you weren't here, go ahead and make a fist like this. You can put it in your lap. And then when we all say out loud, quick to listen, we're going to open up our hands really fast. Because what happens in any kind of confrontation, anytime there's some conflict, what happens is we start to close off. And our fists start to ball up, and our mind starts to close, and our hearts start to close, and we start to get defensive. And when we get defensive, it's really hard to listen. And so what we're going to do is we're all going to say quick to listen, slow to speak. And when we say quick to listen, we're going to open up our hands really, really fast. So we're going to do it on the count of 3. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Now, some of your neighbors didn't do that. Now, some of your neighbors didn't participate. And so go ahead and tell your neighbor next to you, I need you to participate with me just a little bit. Let's do it all together one more time. Put your hands together like this. Then we're going to say, quick to listen, slow to speak. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Now, this week I've had a couple opportunities where I wanted to say some things, where I thought, man, this would be just a good zinger. And I'm reminded, no. Quick to listen, slow to speak. Quick to listen, slow to speak. And here's the crazy thing that happened. There was some apologies that I didn't have to make, because I was quicker to listen and slower to speak. There was some times where I didn't have to clean up the misses that I'd made with my words, because quick to listen, slow to speak. Because in any conflict, whether it's with a board that you serve on, whether it's with a romantic relationship, whether it's with your kids, in any type of conflict, any time where there's a little bit of tension, we see things differently. We all want the same thing, we said, that we all want to be heard and we all want to be understood. But it's hard to be heard and it's hard to be understood when we are defensive, when we have our minds and our hearts closed off. And so James, the brother of Jesus, he invited us to be quick to listen, slow to speak. And this is so important that we get right. Because, again, this is something you already know. You don't need me to tell you this. Don't worry about writing this down. But what's true for all of us is that words are really, really powerful. That your life today has been shaped by the words that were spoken to you, by the words that were spoken about you, by the words that were spoken over you. And that can be a positive thing or that can be a negative thing. But for part of the reason that you are the way that you are today is because you had some people in your life. It could have been a parent, it could have been a coach, it could have been a boss, it could have been a teacher, and they spoke some things to you, they spoke some things about you, and they spoke some things over you. And for some of us, that has propelled us forward. Some of us, that has given us the confidence that we didn't have otherwise. For others of us, it's held us back. For others of us, it's deeply wounded us. So there was some people that said some things, and you're going to see them this Thursday around the Thanksgiving table. And when you see them, the memories of what they said about you or what they said to you, even if you weren't in the room, but it came back to you and you heard what they said about you, you're going to sit around the dinner table and it's shaped you, and you're hoping that that conversation doesn't get brought up, and you're hoping that you don't get caught in the kitchen alone with them because their words were powerful. I had a great dad that every day when we left the door to go out to the school, he would say, "You're a can-doer, you're a can-doer, you're a can-doer." Now, our behavior recently didn't always show that we were a can-doer. Our grades didn't always say that we were a can-doer. Our teachers might not have always thought that we were can-doers, but Dad understood that words are powerful, and he just spoke life into us, and it propelled us forward because your words are powerful. My words are powerful. People with no self-confidence whatsoever have been able to take the world by storm because somebody looked them in the eye and said, "You can do it. We believe in you. We think that you are capable." And then the opposite is also true. People were flying high. People thought they were doing great, and then somebody came along and spoke something, said something, took the wind totally out of the sails. The person that you see when you look in the mirror is oftentimes shaped by the words that were spoken to, about, and over you. And here's the challenge. And these are things that maybe you know, but maybe haven't thought of in these words. Not only are words powerful, but words aren't equally weighted. That when I say something to one of my employees as a boss, that weighs a certain amount. Maybe we'll call it 100 pounds, just for the sake of an argument. But when I go home and when I say things to my kids, that weighs more. It weighs more what a person that you love says to you than a person that is just kind of a distance acquaintance. That the closer you are to the person relationally, the more that your words weigh. And how many negatives words does it, or how many positive words does it take to weigh out one negative? Because they're not one-to-one. That after a service, sometimes people come up and say, "Hey, you did a great job. That was a great sermon. That really spoke to me." And I can have 3 or 4 or 5 people say that to me, and I'm like feeling pretty good about myself. And then you get one negative email or one text that's like, "I'm not so sure." And it just takes the wind totally out of your sails. Why? Because the words aren't equally weighted, and the source also isn't equally weighted. Again, I already said that when somebody that's a distant relative or somebody you don't really know, when they say something, it means a little bit. But when they're really close to you, if it's a mom or if it's a dad, if it's a husband, if it's a wife, man, that source, because it came from that person, it weighs so much. Here's another thing, that the recovery time isn't equally weighted. That the hurt from words spoken carelessly, spoken in a moment of anger, that hurt happens immediately, but the recovery time can take a long time. Some of you might be here this morning and you are still dealing with wounds from things that people said, and it was years ago. Maybe it was when you were a child and you're grown and you've got kids of your own, but when you see that dad or when you see that uncle or when you see that coach that just totally tore into you, man, that the words happened and the hurt happened immediately, but the recovery time, you're not 100% sure that you're ever going to recover, because no amount of follow-up words can make the hurt from the words go away. And we say silly things like, "Well, I said I'm sorry." Well, I said I'm sorry. I've said that I'm sorry, which tells the other person, why can't we go back to where we were before I said something stupid? Because we think in our mind, well, when I say that I'm sorry, that should just wipe out the hurtful words that I said. But we know in reality that's not the way that it is. If I accidentally slammed your car or slammed your hand in a car door, I could say, sorry, I didn't mean to do it. But that doesn't mean that we still don't have to go to the emergency room. Those bones are still broken. And my sorry is meaningful. My sorry, man, I really didn't mean to do that. But that doesn't heal the broken bones. And so the recovery time from the words that we say when we're hungry and when we're emotionally exhausted, when we're angry, when we're stressed, man, the hurt from those words can be impactful immediately, but the recovery time can take a long, long, long time. And so that's why I think we should take James's advice seriously. Be quick to listen, slow speak. James would go on, and you could watch it back last week, and James would go on to say, when you do that, you're slower to get angry, that the blood pressure starts to go down, because your words and my words are the most powerful thing that we have. You can do some damage with your fist, but it doesn't even come close to the damage that you can do with your words. It is the most powerful part of your body. You can destroy, and I can destroy a person, and I don't even have to be in the same room with them. I don't have to be in the same state that they're in, and I can totally wreck them. And James drills down on this idea. We said last week that James was the brother of Jesus, which I think is a great reason that we ought to think that Jesus was who he says he was, because we said last week, what would it take for you to believe that your brother was the Son of God? And then after church, my sister, as I remember the conversation, my sister said, well, I would have believed that. No problem. I could have totally believed that. That's how I heard the conversation. Janae thought, yeah, I would have left that. But James, the brother of Jesus, he really believed that Jesus was not just his brother, but was his Savior, was his Lord. And we said last week, James, we discover him as the leader in the church in Jerusalem. It's the hotbed of where this faith momentum is starting to arise. And we call it the book of James. If you want to turn there, if you brought a Bible or if you have it on a phone, we're going to look at, we call it the book. It's not really a book. It's just a document that James wrote. And then later on, we put verses in there and chapters to make it easier to find. But this is just a document that James wrote, and it's been preserved through antiquity, but it has so much great insight for us. And he drills down in this idea about words. And James, after he wrote this, was stoned to death in about 62 AD, because he really believed, again, that his brother was his Savior. But before that happened, James the Just, that was the nickname that he got, James the Just said this. This is James chapter 3, if you want to follow along. We all stumble, and you know this. We all stumble in many ways. In other words, you're not perfect. You don't always do the right thing. We stumble in many ways, but anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. In other words, here's what James is saying, that if you can keep your words and if you can keep your mouth in check, you will keep your entire body out of trouble. Wow, that's a great thing. How do we do that, James? And he's going to give us some illustrations. He's going to say this. When we get this, we're a rural kind of farming community. We understand what he's saying. When we put bits into the mouth of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. You've seen this. Maybe you've done this, that you can take a little 3-year-old girl or a 4-year-old girl, just a tiny little thing, and you can put her on top of this huge beast, and if she grabs those reins, she can turn that animal anywhere that she wants to go. Not because she's stronger than the horse, but because there's that little thing in the horse's mouth, and it directs it where to go. And in case we didn't quite get that illustration, he shows us something else. He says, okay, think about it this way. Or take ships as an example. Although they're so large and are driven by strong winds, they're steered by very small rudders wherever the pilot wants to go. That this little tiny thing can take this huge ship. It's not, when it comes down to it, when we weigh it against each other, the bit to the horse or the rudder to the ship, man, it's way smaller, but it can control this huge thing. Here's what James is trying to tell us, that it's a small part, but it's got big influence. Small part, big influence. A rudder, a bridle, it's insignificant proportionally, but man, it has extraordinary power to determine direction and to determine destination. Remember, he's talking about our words. Here's where he continues. Likewise, just like the rudder, just like the bridle. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body. Now, about 4 inches long is all your tongue is. It's not a real attractive part of the body. Nobody has ever went and said, girl, you should have seen his tongue. It was so, man, like his face wasn't real good, and his body was pretty rough, but man, his tongue, I want to hang out with him some more. No, because it's pretty ugly. It's really, really, really small. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes these great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by just a small part. We're seeing this in the news right now, that the entire state of California, it seems, is on fire just from a little tiny spark. Just a little. And it's cost lives. Human lives have been lost from a little spark. Billions and billions of dollars in property totally wiped out. How did it start? Just a little tiny spark. He says you've got to be careful, quick to listen, slow to speak. Consider what a great forest is on fire by a small spark. Go to the next slide for me. The tongue, your tongue, you and your big mouth. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. Every kind of evil, imagine any kind of evil you can imagine, it can be initiated by your tongue. That divorce, initiated by the tongue. Adultery, initiated by the tongue. Wars have been started. Lives have been lost. Murders have occurred, all because somebody, little tiny spark. And it's caused extraordinary destruction. And here's the really, really bad news. That you and I were born with the pilot light lit. That no one ever had to teach you to be careless with your words. No one ever had to teach you to take this flame and destroy and to maim and to scald and burn other people. You were born with the pilot light lit. You are sitting here this morning with the pilot light lit. You can do extraordinary damage. James goes on, it's evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body. That the mouth gets the entire body in trouble. When I put my kids in timeout, I'm not just putting the mouth in timeout. The mouth got them there, but I put the whole body in timeout. When a principal expels a student, they don't expel the mouth. They expel the whole body. When you get divorced, you don't divorce the mouth, you divorce the whole person. You don't fire a mouth, you fire the whole person. And it all started, though, with this thing right here. This little thing. That it can do extraordinary damage. And it determines direction, and it determines destination. It can do extraordinary damage. He goes on and he says this. It corrupts the whole body. It sets the whole course of one's life on fire. In other words, here's what James is saying. This ought to make us pause and consider, as your words go, so go your life. As your mouth goes, so goes your life. That you have the potential to burn down your life. You have the potential to burn down your kids' life. You have the potential to burn down the relationships that you're in. And some of us have been a victim of that. That you grew up in a house or went to a school or played on a team and you have been scalded. That somebody was born with their pilot light lit and they didn't take good control of it. They didn't take good care of it. And you are today, years and years and years removed, still holding the scars of words that were spoken. And then when we're confronted with the things that we say, we try to defend ourselves with more words. We say, well, I was just being honest. I was just being honest. Well, I was just kidding. I didn't really mean it. I was just kidding. I was just drunk. I was just mad. I didn't really mean it. But the casualties of those words already have happened. You know, you can start a fire on accident, but you're still responsible for the fire that you started. That even if you accidentally left the candle on, you didn't blow it out, and it caught the house on fire, it was an accident. I didn't mean to do it. We didn't quite get the campground fire all the way put out. We thought we did, but there was still some ash, and it lit the campground on fire. Man, that was an accident. I didn't mean to do it, but I'm still responsible for that fire that I started. And the words that you say, they might be in a moment. They might be in a moment of anger or stress or frustration, or I was just being honest. We're still responsible for those words. Here's what James says. This is so heavy. The whole course of one's life on fire, and it itself, talking about your tongue. We're talking about you and your big mouth. Where does it all come from? Well, James says it's from a really dark place. It itself is set on fire by hell itself. The hell is where all evil starts. And James is saying that when you were born, it was if the devil came along and he took your tongue from the second you were born and lit it on fire. And that fire never, James is getting ready to tell us, that fire never goes out. He's getting ready to give us another illustration. He says this: all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures, they're being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. In other words, that it's not necessarily that we've domesticated every animal, but we're not threatened by the animal world. We're not here worried, are the bears going to overtake us? Or are we going to be totally swarmed by these? We have control over the animals. We have larger guns. We can kill anything. We can take care of any kind of animal. He's saying we've tamed all of those things. But he goes on to say, but no human, you included. It doesn't matter how spiritual you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how educated you are. It doesn't matter how patient you are. It doesn't matter how much you practice. No human can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. That your tongue is untamable. There will always be an element of unpredictability. You can't out-pray it. You can't out-Bible verse memorize it. Your tongue is untamable. It's volatile. It should come with a warning label. Some of us would do well to just put a warning label over our mouths. Warning, I say things that I really don't mean, and this maybe will help us to do it. I've got this little microphone strapped to me right now, right? And I could, in just a couple sentences, ruin my entire career. I could start to say some stuff, and next week you would come, and the elders would be here, and I wouldn't be around. And the elders would come up and they would say, you guys remember Kyle? Yeah, he's not going to be with us anymore. And he says that he's so sorry for what he said, but he's still not coming back. Because of this little thing right here that projects into those black things right here. But it starts with my mouth right here. And then he gives us this dichotomy. He says this: out of our mouth, or with the tongue, we praise our Lord and Father. And with it, that same tongue, we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Jason said, what in the world? You mean to tell me that you'll come to church and you'll sing the songs and you'll open up the scripture and you'll say God bless you and you'll do all those things, and with that mouth you'll praise God, God you're so good, God you're so good, and we'll sing all these songs, and then you'll go to lunch and you'll treat people made in God's image like a jerk? Or you'll go home and you'll talk down to your kids, or you'll go home and you'll holler and scream at your wife? He says that shouldn't be the way that it is. That's unnatural. That the tongue can be at total opposites. He says out of the same mouth come praise and curse. And he goes on to say it this way: my brothers and sisters, this shouldn't be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? And we say, no, that's not possible. That it's either salt water or it's fresh water. It can't be both at the same time. And James is saying your tongue is amazing in that way. Your tongue is unnatural in that way. The natural world, it's either salt water or it's fresh water. It's not both at the same time. But your tongue has the incredible power to speak blessings and cursings with the same tongue within 5 seconds of each other. He says that shouldn't be the way that it is. He goes on and he says, my brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives? We say, no, of course it can't. Can a grapevine bear figs? We say, no. A grapevine can only bear grapes, and neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. And so at this point we get to okay, James, we're with you. I believe that my tongue is set on fire. I believe that my tongue can do extraordinary damage, that it can burn the people in my life, that I can leave a wake of destruction in my path. And we lean to the edge of our seat and we say, okay, James, what's the solution? How do we solve this thing? I'm with you, James. I believe you. The end. James doesn't tell us. He totally pivots to a whole new topic. He doesn't give us any practical application. He doesn't give us any of this deep, profound spiritual insight that if you do 1, 2, and 3, then you'll have this thing solved. No suggestions. No helpful, encouraging principles. He just totally pivots. It's as if James is saying there is no once and for all solution. That there is no possible. It doesn't matter how spiritual you are. It doesn't matter how good of a person you are. You don't graduate out of this. That your tongue has to be constantly guarded. That you never get to the place where you can wake up and you can say, I've got that solved. You never get to the place where you wake up and say, I don't have to worry about my mouth. That you never get to the place where you can say, that's not something that I have to keep a guard over. James says, no, no, no. Day after day, minute after minute, hour after hour, because you can go years and years and years, and you can be doing great, but if you take your eye off it for 1 second, it can leave a wake of destruction, and all of the years of you doing good, and all of the years of you controlling your tongue, it won't stop the destruction that you can say in one fell swoop. It has to be constantly guarded. It has to be constantly watched. We have to be so careful. And so James says, don't forget. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. Quick to listen, slow to speak. And so the temptation is to just pray and close and say, good luck. Hope we all do a good job. But I want to try to really briefly, I want to give you just 3 simple words. You can take a picture of the screens if you want. Here in a second, I want you to write a couple things down, just a couple ideas, or take a picture of the screen with your phone or whatever. Got a couple things that I think might help us just a little bit. I want to give you 3 words. 3 words that isn't going to solve this thing, maybe can keep it at bay just a little bit. Here's the 3 words. Remember, surrender, confess. Remember, surrender, confess. The first one is remember. If we're going to, we cannot control it. We can only maybe keep it at bay, but if we're going to do that, the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to remember. Go to the next slide for me, Keith. We've got to remember. Remember that, man, I am powerful because my words are powerful. You are powerful because your words are powerful. You entered this world from day one. No one ever taught you. No one ever gave you lessons. You entered the world. The pilot light was lit. And the pilot light will stay lit until you die and give your last breath. Every waking moment. Sometimes some of you talk in your sleep. Some of your sleeping moments. Your pilot light is lit. It can be incredibly destructive. And so you need to remember, I need to remember that you have a big mouth and your pilot light is lit. And if you're not careful, you will leave a wake of destruction in your path. Remember, and then the second one is this, that we surrender. That thankfully, we don't have to go through this alone. That we surrender this formidable weapon that we have to our Heavenly Father. That we say, God, I can't control this on my own. I need your help. I want to invite you to stand guard. There was this memory verse, a Bible verse that I learned as a child. I would love for you, I don't know if you memorize Bible verses or not. This is one, though, that you should memorize. You should print this, put it on your fridge, put it at your car, put it on your bathroom mirror. Even if you've never memorized a Bible verse before, this one you should memorize. It says this. This is David talking in Psalms, and he says this, may the words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer. That would be a great verse for you to memorize. And every day you wake up and you see that, and you say again, today, Lord, yesterday I did good, but just because I did good yesterday doesn't mean I'm going to do good today. And so may the words of my mouth, may these meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, oh Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Lord, I'm getting ready to go into this board meeting. May the words of my mouth, may the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you. Lord, I'm going to get ready to fight with my husband. I'm going to get ready to fight with my wife. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you. And along with that, I want to teach you just a little bit of a prayer. I don't know if you pray or not. I know prayer can be a little bit intimidating. I know some people say, man, I don't know what to say. I don't know where to start. I don't know exactly, how do I start? Here's a great prayer. Even if you've never prayed before, this is a prayer that you ought to, maybe not forever, but you ought to just try this for the next 7 days. What would your life look like if for the next 7 days you just woke up and you prayed this prayer right here? Heavenly Father, remind me to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Heavenly Father, I've never prayed before. I'm not even sure, how this works. But Heavenly Father, if this is real, help me to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Heavenly Father, I've got to go meet with this teacher, and I don't think they're treating my kids fair, and I don't like the way that they're doing this. But Heavenly Father, would you remind me, because it's easy for me to forget, to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Heavenly Father, I've got to go talk to my kids, and they're not behaving the way they should behave, and we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about this, and I need to come down kind of heavy. But Heavenly Father, would you remind me as I go into their bedroom to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Heavenly Father, my husband, man, I've got to confront him about this. My wife, we're not seeing this eye to eye. We've had this fight before, and last time it ended with slamming doors and hurt feelings, but here we are again. Heavenly Father, would you help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak? Because the people that you care about the most, you want them to pray this prayer. You want them, before they talk to you, before they confront you, before they have a hard conversation to you, you would love it for them to pray the prayer, Heavenly Father, help me to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Why not join them in that prayer? It can change the dynamic of your relationship. That we remember that our pilot light is lit. We surrender. May the words of my mouth, may the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Heavenly Father, help me to remember to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And then the last word is this: confess. Because it's not if, but it's when. That there's going to come a time where, man, your words get you in trouble. It's just the way that it is. And you're going to have to apologize. And in that moment, when your tongue gets the best of you, don't make excuses for yourself. Don't try to justify it. Just own up to it. I was wrong. I'm sorry. And I know that my apology doesn't help us to avoid the recovery time. And I know that my apology doesn't mean that there has to be some work towards it. But I'm not going to excuse it. I'm not going to justify it. I'm going to apologize for it. Because your words are powerful. Your words matter. Now, wives, if you're a wife, everybody else, you can tune out. Your husbands won't tell you this. I'll tell it to you for you. That your husband tries to act really strong. He tries to act pretty tough. He tries to act like nothing bothers him. But we have pretty fragile egos. And again, he won't tell you this. But I'll let you know. But wives, can I just tell you that the words that you say to your husband matter. And it doesn't matter if the whole world is against me. If my wife is for me, then I could care less. Because the source of words is not equally weighted. And everybody could say, Kyle, you can't do it. Kyle, it doesn't matter. Kyle, you're going to fail. But if I come home, and if my wife says to me, Kyle, I believe, I think you can do it. I believe you can. Well, then I can. Because the source isn't equally weighted. And I put a lot of weight in what my wives say. Wives, you owe it to your husband to be his biggest supporter, his biggest cheerleader. Husbands, men, for whatever reason, we can be so flippant with our words. And for whatever reason, we live in a society that chooses to not honor women. But men, you just need to make the commitment to cut out the sarcasm, to cut out the, oh, well, I was just teasing. Well, I didn't really mean. No. Your words matter. And so, men, you just need to decide, when women are in our presence, I'm going to honor women. And when it's just me and the guys in the break room, and it's just the good old boys, I'm going to honor women. I'm not going to talk about my wife like the old bag, the old ball and chain. No, I'm going to honor women, because here's why it's important. That you want men to honor your daughter. That your daughter is one time going to interact with men, and you want the men that are going to interact with your daughter to honor women. And you need to start leading by example. That way, when your daughter gets around some men that don't honor her, it will be so foreign to her. And she'll think, man, this is totally wrong. This isn't the way that men are supposed to talk to women. I'm going to go find somebody better. I'm going to find somebody new. Men, you owe it to your future daughters, to their future husband, to honor women, because your words matter. All of us, we struggle with this. But for some of you, it's deeper than that. Some of you maybe, I was so lucky that I grew up in a house that, man, encouraging and loving and building. But I know that that's not everybody's story. Some of your story is that you couldn't wait to get out of the house because the words that were thrown around in your house were so hurtful, were so painful. And if that's your story, here's my hope for you, that you will not repeat the cycle. That you'll choose to say, you know what? I grew up in a house where my dad was sarcastic, where my dad was cutting, where I couldn't ever please him. I couldn't ever do it good enough. My grades were never good enough. My accomplishments in sports were never good enough. And I was always trying, and I still feel like I just don't measure up. That was my experience, but that's not going to be the experience of my kids. That's not going to be the way that my son is. That's not going to be the way that my daughter is. You can choose to break the cycle. And I know the excuse. I've heard it so many times. I've used it myself. The excuse is, well, that's just the way that I am. Well, that's just the way that I am. That's just, my dad talked to me like that, and so I just talk like that. That's just the way. And I get it. And we are shaped by our childhood. But just because that's the way that you are today doesn't mean that has to be the way that you are tomorrow. That through Christ, what did Jesus say? That he came to make all things new. And that means that you can start a new legacy. You can start a new cycle. And I know that you were scarred from your past, but you don't have to scar the kids in your life. And you can have children and a legacy that says, man, my mom was so encouraging, and she didn't give me the silent treatment, and she wasn't manipulative, and my dad was a builder, and he was an encourager, and man, he was the best. That can be your legacy, even if that's not your story. And so the encouragement from me to you is this, and I think this is what James is trying to say, is that your mouth cannot be tamed. It can't be tamed. But by God's grace and with thoughtfulness, quick to listen, slow to speak, it can be controlled. It's not ever going to be tamed. You're never going to outgrow it. You're never going to over-spiritualize it. You're never going to graduate out of it. It can't be tamed. But through God's grace, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak. May the words of my mouth, may the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Through God's grace and through thoughtfulness. I'm going to be thoughtful with the words that I say. I'm going to use that pause button. I've never used that pause button in my life, but I'm going to start to use the pause button. Quick to listen, slow to speak. You will, I promise, you will avoid some future regret. You'll avoid having to apologize so much. So this week, I want you to try your best. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. This week, pray that prayer when you wake up in the morning. Heavenly Father, I've got all sorts of conversations that I'm going to have. Would you help me to be quick to listen and slow to speak? Start to memorize that verse. May the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you. Not just pleasing to you when I'm in church, but when I'm with other people who don't care about what words they say. And when I'm in the fight with my wife, or when I'm disciplining my kids, or when I'm really angry, may the words of my mouth, the meditations of my heart be acceptable, be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for these words that you preserved for us, that we can learn from. Thank you so much that you have given us your help, that you've offered to come alongside us to help fight this battle. And our tongue is never going to be fully solved. It's never going to be fully tamed. But through your grace and through some thoughtfulness, it can be controlled. And so this week, Lord, in the heat of the battle, in the heat of the moment, when we're angry, our blood pressure is going, we want to defend ourselves, we want to defend what we think is right, would you help us to hit that pause button? And would we remember this moment today? And we would just, in our mind, we would just pray that simple prayer. Heavenly Father, help us to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Lord, I pray for those that grew up in a house, that grew up in environments where words were spoken carelessly, and they were a victim of destruction. Lord, I pray that you would bring healing to hearts. Lord, that self-confidence that was destroyed would be built back up again. And Lord, for those that grew up in that environment, and if they're honest, that's kind of the cycle that they're continuing with their own family. Lord, would you give them the courage to start a new cycle, to start something new, to break old habits and to start new. That they would be able to say, that might be the way that I am, but that's not the way that I have to be going forward. It's in your name that we pray.